I titled this, Let Me Reintroduce Myself, because ultimately my character was slandered in that program. And the underlying sentiment is that I'm someone who is not worthy enough to challenge certain ideas from certain elder scholars. And I'm hoping I can, reinforce something. So this is something I don't do on a regular, you know, I don't do it at all. And, because it's unnecessary. But at this point, it's necessary. So the underlying sentiment was that I was anti-Diop and anti-Ogbako, that I was throwing their name through the mud. And it's very surprising, given the fact of who I am, what organizations I'm a part of, and what I represent. And so, again, this is my latest work, Nsureoku, King in Ancient Egyptian. And I note again that the second to the last chapter, after chapter 16 is the conclusion, I have a whole discourse on elders and leadership in the community. So when somebody asks me about my end game, what's my end game, what's my mission, it's clear that they haven't read any of my works. And so the very last book that I published has to deal with leadership in the African world community and the lack thereof. And so I draw from indigenous African systems to remind us what leadership is in the African context and their responsibilities. And so, of course, this has to deal to a certain extent with elders. And so what I saw was unelder behavior. I saw childish behavior, and I expected more. So, hold on, as I move this up. Okay. So, what I have here to start off, I want to start off, and believe me, I'm going somewhere with this, so stay with me as I do this. So, this is a Skype conversation from 9/4/2016. There's a young man out in Israel, Tel Aviv, Israel, who belongs to the Baluba people of Central Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo. And every now and then we'll get together and we'll exchange notes, comparing the ancient Egyptian language with Chiluba, his native tongue. And so he's familiar with my work, he's familiar with the scholarship, and he's actually involved in that process as well. So he's doing something in his own way, and sometimes we compare notes. So this is a transcript of it, just copy and paste. So I say, this is me, Asar, Imhotep. This is Patrick, Kupuya, Shiuma. So Moyo's a Chiluba word just meaning greetings. So greetings, how are you? He replies back. I say, I am well. I saw you logged in and I decided to say, hey, how's things been where you're at? So he replies, that's very nice of you. I'm still in Israel, still researching. So I reply, respect. Continue your studies. You're on the verge of some major discoveries. And so Patrick says, I'd say I think each one of us brought his stone to the building. You know, Professor Bilolo spoke about you to people back home. He continues, he's the elder. And if he says your name among other elders, it means a lot for a lot of the Luba Nation, especially those involved in recovering our history. And I replied, that's an honor. And then we continue our, saying discourse. But I have this highlighted for a reason, that there's a Professor Bilolo who speaks about me to his people back home in the Democratic Republic of Congo. He's the elder, and if he says your name among other elders, it means a lot for all the Luba Nation, especially those involved in recovering our history. So who is this Professor Bilolo that he speaks of? So this is Dr. Mubabinge Bilolo. He was born in 1953 in Kabwe and Kaka in the Kasai region of the Congo Kinshasa. He's a citizen of the Luba Nation or the Bukama Empire. He is actually of royal lineage. He is a prince of the Chinima or Shinima Nome, of the Princedom of Kabiye, the Kingdom of Ikole or Matamba. So he is a scholar who is also of royal blood. He is the head of the Sheikh Anta Diop Center for Egyptology within the African Institute for Future Studies, which is an institution of the African Union for the fundamental research and the formation of the inventors of the African future, with headquarters in Kinshasa, Congo. So he's the head of the Sheikh Anta Diop Center for Egyptology. Keep in mind these names I'm dropping. He is very well educated in a number of disciplines. And so he spent 25 years in university training that involved 4 phases of study. And so the first phase was philosophy, anthropology, sociology, and African religions, theology, and human sciences. The second phase was philosophy, social sciences, and fundamental theology. The third phase was Egyptology, ethnology, African studies, and religious sciences. Phase 4 was political science, sociology, infrastructure, economics, and the environmental management. He was trained by the best specialist of African linguistics and Bantu, Professor Dr. Kadima Kamuleta, by the best specialist of African oral literature, Professor Mufuta Kabemba, and by the best specialist of African religions. Bilolo taught Quranic religion and other African religions in 1978 and 1979, as well as Eastern religions in African philosophy, philosophical hermeneutics, and philosophy of language, from Ptah-hotep, Kagemi, Wigginson, Austin, Sear, Ricord, Heidegger, Gadamer, and others. He taught the concept of nature in Akhenaten, Plato, Aristotle, Augustinus, Descartes, Kant, Hegel, Edgar Morin, etc., before coming to Europe to finish his PhD. I'm going somewhere. So he has written a number of texts. And so this is one of his texts. He mainly writes in French and German. Well, he only writes in French. Well, mainly writes in French and German. He also writes in his native Chiluba as well. So this is towards a Egyptian Coptic and Luba dictionary, Bantu vocabulary, and Egyptian Coptic, and the essays of Homberg and Benga. Here are a few other of his books in French. This Tuleshi Kapia de Yanga Chikam is in Chiluba. Everything else is in French. This is his book on Amen. The creator and creation and Memphite thought of Armana, and a whole host of other texts. This isn't all of it. There's more text. This is from the short German Wikipedia page on Dr. Mubabinge Bilolo. And so I have highlighted here in orange something in particular, this aspect. So, if you type in Mubabinge Bilolo in, Google, probably one of the first pages that will come up is this German rendering of it. But I'm just going to highlight this right here. It's written in German and I translated it. So it's going to be on the next slide. So this is the German. So if people are reviewing this, you can, check my German, which is very bad. So I had to get Google assistance on most of these words. And so it says here at the top, topics of his scientific work are Egyptology, history of African philosophy, African religion and philosophy, the philosophy of history, and the history of philosophy of history. I know that sounds confusing. In 2013, he was awarded the International Prize for African Egyptology in Paris and was admitted to the Circle of Negro African Scholars in Belgium. Included in that group is Cheikh Anta Diop, Key Zerbo, who's the editor of the first UNESCO methods book on the general history of Africa. Obenga, we all know who Theophilo Obenga is, and Wimwinyi Kweshi, who's another influential theologian out of the continent. So a lot of these names may be new to some folks because they're more well known in the Francophone world, in the German-speaking African world, and so English has a ways to catch up to the knowledge of these African scholars. So at the end of 2013, on the occasion of his 60th jubilee, so he was awarded the African Egyptology Prize for African Egyptology in Paris and was admitted into the circle of these esteemed Africans. So when I say Dr. Bilolo, there's a group of individuals. There's a very few group of individuals you can put this person in, and that is with Cheikh Anta Diop, that is with Obenga, and these other scholars and theologians that we mentioned here, who are big names in Africa. Again, I'm going somewhere. So we all heard about this 1974 Cairo Symposium, but not many are familiar with the 1993 symposium that was held in Barcelona, Spain, for which Dr. Alan Anselin, Benga, Bilolo, and others, continued that discourse from the 1974 symposium. So Bilolo was one of those individuals there. And so this is a screenshot of an email that I received way back in 2013, just a little bit after his induction amongst these pillars of African scholarship. And so it's in French. So I just wanted to get the screenshot so, those reviewing can review this and look over my translation. And so what happened, let me give a little background. There was an email sent that was asking about me in my scholarship because I was using the Chiluba language, and I'm obviously not a Chiluba speaker, at least by native blood. And so some of the scholars wanted to know who I was and how the heck I started knowing all this Chiluba. And so Dr. Bilolo is one who responded to them. And this was one of the second emails. And so we'll get to the first one in a little bit. Again, this is all coming to a point. The author of the first email, his last name is Ngangabuka. And so this is Bilolo addressing him. And then he goes, "It was I who responded to the letter of June 8, 2012. During my last visit to Houston, just 12 months ago, I met the Houston group around Asar Imhotep in the Department of Black Studies of the University of Houston. One of Asar Imhotep's parents seems to be from Mozambique. This is not accurate per se. He's recalling my DNA test, where my maternal DNA went to Mozambique. So that's what I informed him, but he interpreted as that's where my mother is from directly. But that's not the case. So this could explain why he finds himself more easily in the Chiluba language. I do not think that the Luba Online Dictionary and that the Luba Dictionary of Morrison can explain his whole approach. And I put in parentheses to the study of Chiluba and Chicam. And Chicam is just Egyptian. In addition, in this group, there are young people who come from different countries of the Black world. I had asked Dr. Kalamba Nsapo to involve him in the Melange Ngindu Musheta and other works that will follow. In short, we carefully follow his research while leaving him a great space to exploit his own intuitions. Have a good day." He usually ends all his emails with Osiris' son. And then this is my name in Chiluba, Mwana Mushila wa Chijila. So y'all may not know me by that name, but that's my Chiluba name. So that book, shortly after that, I actually got an email from Dr. Kalamba. And I've already worked with Dr. Kalamba because I translated one of his books from French into English, and you can find it on Amazon. And hold on, let me pull it. Yes, Praying in Africa. And so he's comparing the concept of prayer in Africa, and he's using some prayers native to Chiluba and in comparison to Akhenaten's hymn to the Creator. And so that is my translation into English from French, Dr. Kalamba and Sapo. So that was published in 2012 when we finished that. So this is 2013, and then in 2014 was published the other book that they mentioned. So I'm just translating from the French, and I'm holding it in my hands, Unity and Plurality of the Truth, Essays in Honor of Professor Dr. Alfonso Ngindu Musheta. And again, this is another powerful African theologian, even though in the Christian set, he kind of crosses many boundaries. And so this is edited by Kalamba Sapo and Dr. Malamba Mpoyi. So this is published in 2014. And so my article is chapter 4, right after Bilolo's, on the etymology of Ba'at and its origin in family. So again, I'm getting to a point. And so this is the first email, and this is my translation, or at least of the first part. The other part doesn't pertain to this. So, so the other individual who we mentioned earlier, he says, June 8, 2012, one of you made the following suggestion. And so that's what Bilolo was responsive to. So Bilolo was saying that I think he can better, talking about me and Imhotep, can discuss Muntu and Intu better than most Luba speakers. He has an article on the Chikam Remechu, or the word Remich for the people in ancient Egyptian, and the terms Muntu, Luntu, Tuntu, Baluntu, etc., as well as on Chikam Intu and these other forms, Kamantu, Chikam, and Chibantu. Attested in Coptic, it is not common in Chiluba in the broad sense. Excuse me. Attested in Coptic is not that common, but in Chiluba in the broad sense has all these terms. You have certainly received an invitation to visit the link asarmhotep.com to have necessary information regarding the new book from this relatively young adult researcher. So they're talking about me and my research in the Congo. So everybody that's emailed on there are professors of theology and linguistics in Congo, and some are spread out in Europe, in France, and places like Belgium, things of that nature. So he mentioned that when he came to Houston. So this is a screenshot of a video that I have uploaded of Dr. Mubabingi Bilolo when he came to Houston in 2010. And so I had translated, I'm sorry. Okay. I had translated, parts of this speech because he's speaking in French, and this young lady that we have here was actually from Nigeria. We had her translating. So this is the link that you can visit. And so during the course of this this talk, and he's relating the Egyptian language and arguing that it is a Bantu language. So that's the crux of his art. Of his talk. It's about almost 2 hours long. So at 3 minutes and 32 seconds, this is when I just introduced him. So, so now he's beginning to talk. And so he says, yes, thanks, greeting the audience. He says, thank you for your presence. When we left Dallas, we thought that everyone had already left because they were having problems with renting their car. He had visited Dallas. He actually has family in Dallas, but he lives in Belgium. He's from Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo. And so most of the people, had already left, but there was a remnant that stayed. And I made sure that I recorded it. So, those who didn't attend could, get the wisdom of Dr. Bilolo. So, but we are going to take Mr. Asar out to talk over a glass of beer. It would have probably been a smoothie because I don't drink As you know, he's a great researcher with regard to ancient Egyptian and Negro African languages. In 4 minutes and 36 seconds, he says, talking about me again. So all these sidelights is when he's mentioning my name. He plays on the methodological level, Mr. Asar. Methodologically, very important role that most scientists as well as linguists and so-called Egyptologists have not yet noticed. For me, who knows the problem, I tell them, the Egyptologists, you have a genius who is budding and that you must all support. In 5 minutes and 28 seconds, I said that Asar plays a strategic role, methodologically, in the research of the connections or in the demonstrations of the Bantu character of the ancient Egyptian language and culture. In 18 minutes and 45 seconds, he mentions my name again. He says that and the work that Mr. Asar has done is to check whether I'm right. So he's telling you here that he's not just accepting what I'm saying, that he goes and verifies everything that I write. You know, and he applied it to very strategic words, like the word God, goddess, like the word Osiris, you know, that he sometimes write as Asar, and that spelling there. Good. A word like Osiris and many other words where he tries taking now the dictionary entries, the Chibantu, and we teach from Bantu languages, we see that we are able to contribute, and he's talking about to Egyptology, and to go beyond. Therefore, to go beyond what exists today and position Africa at the forefront of research on the Nile Valley, to position it at the forefront of its research so as to be the best. In 20 minutes and 42 seconds, he says, now, starting from the Bantu languages, we can see that we are able to contribute to go beyond what exists today, to position Africa at the forefront of research about the Nile Valley. This work that I'm doing here, Asar has controlled. I mean, it's just his way of saying verified. He went even further. So he's saying that I've done some work, but Asar has went further. He has discovered this. When we say origin in Lingala, we say Ibandeli, it's the beginning. Indela, Indeli. So when you see me say Madu Indeli, or Madu Indela, or Madu Indeli, this is the word, you know, this is what Indela and Indeli mean. Is the birth, the generation. Ba Indela means those who generated us, or those who begot us. And if we take the nuances in Lingala, it means that which is at the origin, at the source, the primary cause. So I highlight this because he's saying that I advanced his work. And so, yeah, so that's that. And I'm doing this way because you have to understand that this individual, who the African world in Egyptology and linguistics, who is of royal lineage in the Congo, who speaks positively to me about all the elders, to all the elders in the scholastic community and in his community, where people all the way in Israel is hearing about this, not only admires the work I do, asks other scholars to ensure that they publish my work in their work, and that and he told me personally, he said he wouldn't, that he told Dr. Nsaba not to publish it until, you know, he had an article for me in there. And so someone who advances his work and also goes through the process of verifying it, not just regurgitating what he says, that should tell you something. So for those people who don't know, he's like one of my main mentors, the main reason why I use Chiluba in my work. And, you know, sought him out a good number of years ago. So it's about 10 years now I have been studying, you know, saying under him. And so for this person to do all of this, and keep in mind that he's in the Diopian school. So when we talk about all those are people in the Diopian school. And that's the reason why I make sure I highlight that he's the head of the Sheikh Anta Diop Center for Egyptology, you know, and it's published with Obenga and others. And so when I'm thinking about elders and what elders do, you know, he's one of those people I consider an elder. And so here's another email from, for example, Dr. Wade Nobles. And so I copied and pasted the next slide so you can see it fully, but this is a screenshot from my email. So this was when in 2014, in February. And so Kenneth Nunn is the one who, no, my bad. It's Kenneth Nunn who sent the email. He CC'd Dr. Wade Nobles. But this is going to be important here. He says, Brother Asar, I am on the planning committee for the ASCAT conference. I am putting together a panel to recognize Dr. Fukiao's, another scholar out of the Congo, to African-centered thought. In particular, the panel process to discuss the teaching and writing of Dr. Fukiao and the contribution he made to our recovery and understanding of the African worldview. Dr. Nobles was originally scheduled to present on the panel, but cannot. He suggested that I contact you instead. I have seen the paper you provided, Dr. Nobles, with your linguistic analysis of the meaning of Ahmed. It is very good, but somewhat off topic for the panel I have in mind. Do you have another presentation that is more in line with the topic of the panel that I can propose to the planning committee? If so, I will forward your information on to them and let them know what they decide. In any event, I look forward to meeting you at the ASCAT conference in Newark. Again, why would somebody like Wade Nobles think of me first to replace him on a panel to honor another well-dignified African scholar? I attend the Diop conference. I've been attending for the last 10 years. And in 2015, I was a featured speaker, and I also got this award from the Diop conference. We keep bringing this name Diop for a reason. As you can see, and it's kind of dusty, so this picture has informed me that I need to dust this award off the wall. But the Diopian Institute for Scholarly Advancement presents to Asar Imhotep the DISA Award for Intellectual Initiative and Academic Action. The 27th Annual Sheikh Anta Diop International Conference, October 16, 17, 2015, Philadelphia, PA. And, you know, there are a lot of individuals that you can put in the Diopian school who contributes and advances the work of Diop. You know, sorry. So, of course, we know Diop and Dr. Theophilo Bingham. We know Dr. Raketi Allen and Dr. Jacob Carruthers. Others may not know Abu Bukri Musalam, you know, one of Sheikh Anta Diop's proteges, direct proteges. Babakar Sal, another African scholar in the Diopian school. Of course, the first person to formally teach me Medu Neter, Baba Ankh Mira. And of course, one of the latest in that school, Brother Jean-Claude Mbog. Now, keep in mind that Dr. Bilolo, one of the major figures in Africology, Egyptology, and linguistics, makes it a point to talk about my methodical and scientific approach to the study of history, to the point where I advance.
Excuse me, Asar. Excuse me, real quick, Asar. I'm sorry. Did you mean to unshare? Because your screen went black for a second. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, I stopped sharing. That was the last slide.
Okay, all right. Sorry, continue.
No problem. So when I say that I'm in the Diopian school, I am bona fide by these elder scholars. And I have the works to prove it. And that's just a few. I could have went on and on, but I didn't want to do that. So when someone like Mfadishi, someone who makes public arguments that they found 100,000-year-old African woman in a spaceship with locks, and somebody who argues about crystals and chakras and ancient Kemet and using your third eye and all of this other kind of stuff has the audacity to question my loyalty and agency. You know, it's heartbreaking and it's disappointing, especially from someone who was supposed to be an elder and someone who on this question is not even qualified to make the kinds of argument that he made on that show regarding my work on the meaning of Kemet, for which he has never read. And the same thing with Brother Taka. As brilliant and accomplished as he is an expert in his field. However, on this question of Kemet, on this thing of linguistics and Egyptology, I am their elders because I've been doing this longer and I've been publishing longer in these fields. And so for y'all to come together and act as if I'm like some lightweight, that who is he to question a point made by Diop is disingenuous, and y'all are definitely misinformed. And so while I do engage with people in the conscious community, it's because I'm trying to bring all of these African scholars to the forefront of these people in the community. And I know we have personality issues and we deal with them appropriately. But if somebody from the academic world doesn't bring these scholars to them, they will be stuck with old and outdated information regarding their African history. And so, of course, you can tell by my conversation that I feel some kind of way. And again, my perspective, it sounds like a gang of old men gossiping about matters in which they don't know, especially on this meaning of Kemet, for something I've been studying for 20 years and debating with scholars for 20 years. And so, you know, I don't do this often, but I have to remind folks sometimes that, you know, there's no disingenuousness with me. There's no slandering of Obinga and Diop.